If you've ever camped alone in the deep woods, you know this feeling. The way the night folds around you, thick and suffocating, as if the trees themselves are leaning in, listening. Footsteps crunch somewhere beyond your firelight, too deliberate to be an animal, yet too quiet to be a person. A whisper drifts on the wind, but when you strain to listen, it vanishes, leaving only the pulse of your own heartbeat and the uneasy rustle of leaves. I remember one night like that, standing by a flickering campfire, when the shadows seemed to twitch just beyond the circle of light. I could feel eyes on me, though I couldn't see anything moving. Every instinct screamed to leave, but curiosity, or something darker, kept me rooted in place. The woods felt alive in a way that didn't belong to nature, as if some unseen presence was testing the boundaries of reality. Tonight, I'm going to tell you 10 stories, true accounts from people who wandered these same woods, people who discovered that the darkness carries secrets some of us are better off never knowing. By the time you hear them, you might feel that same prickling unease, that gnawing sense that danger is not somewhere else, but just beyond your vision, right behind you. And if you've ever doubted the stories you've heard about these forests, you might want to reconsider. Because out here, the line between fear and reality is thinner than you think. And some of the truths you're about to hear aren't meant for everyone. Over the years, I've collected stories from campers, hikers, and locals. People who ventured into the deep woods expecting a peaceful escape, only to find themselves staring into something far darker. 10 of these accounts stuck with me the most, each one more unsettling than the last. That's what we're going to explore tonight. 10 true stories that reveal how fragile the line between tranquility and terror really is. Each story begins like any ordinary camping trip. Friends gather around a crackling fire. Children laugh as they chase fireflies, and the scent of pine hangs sweet in the evening air. But nature has a way of hiding its teeth behind beauty. And soon, the ordinary becomes extraordinary in the worst possible way. You'll notice the pattern, the calm, idyllic moments shattered by whispers in the night, footsteps just beyond the tent, and shadows that move with a mind of their own. As we move through these accounts, pay attention. Some of the people I spoke with encountered a presence they couldn't explain, a feeling, a shadow, a voice that followed them through the woods. It reappears across stories, always lingering at the edge of perception, always just out of reach. And while some of these tales have endings, others do not. Some secrets remain unresolved, and it's those very gaps that will haunt your imagination long after the stories are over. So keep watching, because you might recognize something from your own trips. An odd sound, a fleeting shadow, a moment where the forest seemed just a little too quiet. By the time you've heard all 10 stories, you'll start to realize the truth. In these woods, nothing is as it seems, and sometimes the things we fail to see are the very things we should fear the most. Story 1. The Whispering Trees. It started innocently enough. I had arrived at a small clearing after a long day's hike. The kind of spot that feels carved out just for you. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, birds chirped, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. I pitched my tent, cooked a simple meal, and settled in, thinking the hardest decision of the night would be whether to read by lantern or head straight to sleep. But as darkness fell, the wind seemed to carry voices. At first, I convinced myself it was just that. Wind weaving through the branches. But the more I listened, the more it sounded like whispers, almost words, curling and twisting through the air. I strained my ears, telling myself I was imagining things, that a long day of hiking had left me on edge. Then the little things started. My backpack, which I had left neatly by the tent, was no longer where I'd set it. Footprints, small, oddly shaped, circled the clearing, stopping just at the edge of the firelight. Shadows stretched and twisted in impossible ways, as if the forest itself were shifting while I blinked. My heartbeat thumped in my chest, every instinct screaming that I wasn't alone. I tried to laugh it off, to convince myself it was animals or the play of shadows. But that night, nothing seemed normal. Then, just beyond the tree line, I saw it. A figure, tall, thin, and impossibly still, standing between the trees. Its eyes, if they were eyes, gleamed faintly, reflecting the firelight. I froze, unable to move or call out, as a sense of awareness passed between us. It was Egypt's, as if the forest itself was studying me, cataloging me, remembering me. I never saw it move, never heard it approach, yet the feeling of its presence lingered long after my fire burned low. When I finally drifted into a restless sleep, the whispers continued, softer this time, like a warning. They say the forest remembers those who wander off trail, and some of its memories are not meant to be forgotten. I packed up at dawn, glancing back at the trees. They swayed innocently in the morning light, but I knew better. Somewhere out there, whatever watched me that night was still there, hidden in the green, patient and silent. Story 2. Campfire Guests. We had just settled in for the night. A small circle of friends around a crackling campfire. The smell of burning pine filled the air, and laughter bounced between the trees as we swapped stories and toasted marshmallows. Everything felt safe. Warmth, light, companionship. Then came the rustling. At first, it was subtle, barely audible over the pop of the fire. We joked about raccoons or deer, maybe a stray wind snapping a branch. But then, the sounds grew closer, circling the perimeter of our campsite, and with them came voices. Whispered voices. "Did you hear that?" one friend asked, trying to keep the tone light. "I think it's just the wind," I said. But my own voice felt thin, nervous. The whispers grew clearer, repeating snippets of our conversation from earlier that evening. One voice mimicked the exact words I had muttered about a bad pun. Another repeated a teasing remark my friend had made about the campsite's isolation. We froze. No one had spoken since the fire started. "Who's there?" I called, my voice cracking. Silence. Then the whispers again, closer, circling, like the forest itself had learned our words. One phrase lingered longer than the others. "Don't turn your back." We scanned the darkness beyond the firelight. But the trees swayed empty. The shadows seemed too dense, too deliberate, as though they moved with a life of their own. One of my friends saw a figure crouched just beyond the tree line, pale and unmoving, watching. I've read about people seeing this before. Maybe you have too. Campers report hearing their own voices repeated back, seeing shapes that vanish when approached, feeling an uncanny intelligence observing them. That night, we left our fire smoldering and retreated to the tent, each of us avoiding eye contact, hearts hammering in sync with the wind. By morning, the forest was calm, as if nothing had happened. But the memory of those voices stayed with us. Even now, I sometimes hear my own words echoed softly in the dark, a reminder that some guests of the night are never truly gone. Story 3. The Vanishing Trail. I had hiked these woods countless times before. Every trail marker, every bend in the path, even the creak of the old oak at the fork, it was all familiar. I thought I knew these woods like the back of my hand. But that morning, as I followed the trail, something was off. The markers I relied on seemed to vanish. Trees shifted oddly, and paths that should have led downhill now twisted in impossible directions. At first, I laughed nervously, blaming fatigue or the morning fog that clung to the forest floor like a living thing. But the more I walked, the less sense the trail made. Birds I knew were silent. The wind had no sound. Even the rustle of leaves underfoot seemed muted, like the forest had been drained of normalcy. Every step made my pulse quicken, a low gnawing fear settling in my stomach. I tried retracing my steps, hoping to find the familiar cairn of stones that marked a junction I passed yesterday. But the further I went, the more alien the woods felt. Footfalls that weren't mine echoed behind me, too measured to be random. I began to hear whispers carried in the fog, indistinct yet urgent, like voices speaking in a language I almost understood. My own voice seemed to echo unnaturally when I called out, bouncing back at odd intervals, sometimes mocking me. Hours, or maybe minutes. Time had started to warp. I stumbled into a clearing. My heart skipped. It was my campsite from the previous day. My tent, the fire pit, the backpack exactly where I had left it. Relief washed over me, but only briefly, because something was subtly, horrifyingly wrong. The tent seemed taller, the fire pit oddly sunken, my backpack worn as if it had been used by someone else. And the air smelled faintly of smoke, but not from a fire I had made. Something older, acrid, and sweet. I called out, half expecting a friend, half expecting nothing. Silence answered. The fog thickened, curling around the clearing like fingers, and in the shadows, shapes seemed to shift. I wanted to leave, but the familiar paths were gone again. It was as if the woods had reshaped themselves overnight, rewriting their geography to trap me in a loop I could not escape. If you think you know the woods, think again. The forest has its own memory, its own rules, and for those who wander too far, it can rewrite reality around them. Some paths disappear, only to return in altered forms. Some voices follow you long after they should have faded. That night, I realized I was not alone. And perhaps I never had been. The trees remembered me, as they remember all who stray from the trail, and the fog was only the beginning. Story 4. Night Screams. We had gathered for a weekend camping trip. 5 friends seeking the quiet escape of the forest. The fire crackled, shadows danced, and laughter carried into the night. For a while, everything felt safe, until the screams started. They came from somewhere deep in the woods, high-pitched and piercing, slicing through the calm like a knife. We froze, glancing at one another. Maybe it's an animal? One friend suggested, voice tight. No way, another said. That wasn't any animal I've ever heard. The tension grew. The screaming stopped, then started again, closer this time. We debated. Should we investigate or stay put? Fear warred with curiosity, and somewhere between courage and stupidity, we decided to move toward the sound. Branches snapped underfoot, and every shadow seemed to stretch toward us. Then, in a heartbeat, one of our group vanished. One moment, he was beside me. The next, gone. Swallowed by the darkness. Panic surged. We called his name, our voices cracking, but only the echoes answered. Then it happened. Through the dense trees, over the distant hum of insects, we heard it again. But not a scream this time. A voice, familiar, terrified, calling out his name, as though he was close yet impossibly far. None of us could locate him. The forest gave nothing but more shadows, more whispering leaves, and the lingering sense that something watched, patient and calculating. We never found him that night. The next morning, his belongings remained where he had left them, the fire pit quarrying and undisturbed. Some screams never stop. They linger in your mind long after the forest falls silent. And even now, when the wind shifts just right, I swear I hear his voice carried among the trees, calling for help from a place that may no longer exist in our world. Story 5. Cabin in the woods. After the incident with the screams, we thought a change of scenery might calm our nerves. A day hike led us deeper into the forest, farther than any of us had been before, until we stumbled upon something that didn't belong. A small cabin, tucked between gnarled trees, as, as if hidden on purpose. The wood was weathered, grey, and rough, yet it had the unmistakable presence of human hands. Curiosity outweighed caution. We approached slowly, noticing carvings etched into the doorframe, symbols we didn't recognize, spiraling patterns that seemed to shift in the corner of your vision. Inside, the cabin smelled of damp earth and something older, something metallic. Strange objects were arranged with eerie precision. Bones, stones, and trinkets we couldn't identify, each one placed like an offering. The air felt heavier, charged with a quiet, oppressive energy. One of my friends, braver, or perhaps more reckless, picked up a small blackened figurine. The moment her fingers touched it, her eyes widened and she gasped. The world around her seemed to dissolve. She screamed, though no sound came from her mouth. Visions flashing before her eyes, endless trees, shadows moving between them. Faces that weren't human, watching and judging. I grabbed her arm, pulling her back into reality. But the terror lingered. We debated what we had found. Was it a relic of some cult? A forest ritual we weren't meant to witness? No one could say for sure. Every detail, the carvings, the careful placement of objects, the oppressive feeling of being watched, hinted at rules we did not understand. Laws of this forest we were intruding upon. We left the cabin behind, but the images stayed with us, haunting our thoughts. I keep thinking about the question we all asked ourselves then. What would you do if you saw this? Walk away, pretend it didn't exist, or take the chance to uncover its secrets? Some secrets, we realized, are dangerous simply because they remember you once you've seen them. And even now, whenever I pass a secluded clearing or hear an unexplained rustle, I think of that cabin, waiting silently, holding its secrets, its laws, and perhaps even the power to draw you back. We weren't ready to understand it then, and I'm not sure we ever will be. Story 6. Eyes in the Darkness. We set out for a night hike, eager to see the forest in a lightless world, our headlamps cutting narrow beams through the darkness. At first, it was serene, an almost sacred quiet, broken only by our own footsteps and the occasional owl. But soon, something shifted. From the corner of my eye, I saw them, tiny pinpricks of light, faint at first, glowing between the trees. I stopped and squinted, telling myself it was just reflections, fireflies maybe. But the lights didn't flicker like insects. They stared. There were dozens, then hundreds scattered across the woods, each pair seeming to watch my every move. "Do you see that?" I whispered to my friend. He froze, his face pale. "Yeah, it's probably nothing." But it wasn't nothing. The more we walked, the closer they seemed. Shapes moved just beyond the reach of our beams, and every time I looked back, I caught a glimpse of glowing eyes where there should have been none. Paranoia tightened around us like a vice. Were we being followed? Or were our minds turning on us? The trail ended at a clearing, and I finally turned fully, heart hammering. The eyes had vanished, melting into the darkness, as though they had never existed. Relief should have followed, but it didn't. The forest felt alive with absence, an emptiness that was too deliberate, too knowing. The tension lingered in my chest, an unshakable sense that somewhere, just beyond the range of sight, something was still watching, waiting. Sometimes, looking back isn't safe. Even when nothing is there, you feel it as if the memory of those eyes haunts long after the forest has gone silent. A reminder that some presences aren't meant to be confronted directly. They follow you, not in form, but in fear. And the longer you wander, the more certain you become that the woods have their own way of marking who they observe. Story 7. The Lost Camper. I found these notes online, tucked away in a forum for hikers and campers, anonymously posted, with no explanation. Maybe you've seen them too. They belong to someone who called themselves simply Jay, a solo camper who disappeared without a trace. What remained were journal entries, scribbled hurriedly, each one darker than the last. The first entry was mundane. Packing lists, trail plans, excitement over secluded streams, and quiet evenings. But by the second day, the tone shifted. "The forest is watching," Jay wrote. "I swear I saw movement just beyond the tree line, but no one's there. Maybe I'm imagining things." By the third entry, humor creeps in, ironically. "I think the squirrels are mocking me, or the wind is. Either way, I'm losing it." The words are almost funny until the next line. "I can hear whispers telling me I'm off trail." Off trail from what? Who cares? Don't follow the path too closely. Each entry escalates. The whispers grow more specific. Shadows form patterns, and small objects in the campsite shift overnight. Jay writes with a mix of fear and fascination, as though part of them wants to see what happens next. And then, the final entry. "I think they know I'm writing. I see eyes everywhere." No, not eyes. Something older. Don't laugh. The firelight isn't enough. If you're reading this, don't come here. Or maybe do. See if they'll remember you too. The notes end abruptly, mid-sentence, leaving a chill that no amount of daylight can erase. There's no record of Jay being found. The forest swallowed them whole, leaving only these scribbled warnings, and the feeling that whatever stalked Jay was the same presence glimpsed in other stories. The whispering trees, the glowing eyes, the cabin that watched. Sometimes I wonder about the dark humor threaded through their words. Laughing at fear seems to make it sharper, more immediate. Reading these entries, you feel both entertained and hunted at the same time. A strange tension that crawls under your skin. And the worst part? The forest never forgets. If you wander too far, who knows what notes you'll leave behind? or if anyone will find them before it's too late. Story 8. The Hiker Who Never Returned. It started with a missing hiker, someone who had gone out for a day hike and never returned. Friends reported them overdue. Search parties combed the trails, and still, there was no sign. Weeks later, the hiker's phone appeared, left on a park bench, screen cracked, battery nearly dead. At first, the texts seemed normal. Location updates, photos of moss-covered rocks, the usual nature snapshots. But then, the messages changed. They predicted events before they happened. A fallen tree on a known trail, the sudden appearance of a dense fog, distant screams in the night. Whoever or whatever was sending them knew the forest intimately, knew what would happen before it did. Recipients reported a creeping dread with each notification, a sense that the forest itself was speaking through the device. Some messages were simple warnings, others were more personal, describing things only the hiker would know, things the search parties hadn't found or recorded. And the last text, it was a single line: "I see you. Don't follow." No signature, no explanation, just the knowledge that something still present in the woods was watching. Even now, hikers and campers report strange notifications on phones left behind. The faint glow of screens illuminating shadows where nothing should be. The hiker never returned, but the warnings continue. Some threats never leave, and some forests remember more than we think. If you wander these woods today, the danger may not be behind you. It may already be observing, waiting, sending messages you don't want to receive. Story 9. The Shadow Among Pines. We spend the day hiking, joking, and skipping stones across a quiet forest stream. The sun glinted off the leaves, and the woods felt alive in a gentle, familiar way. By evening, we set up camp, lit a fire, and shared stories, convinced nothing could disturb the calm we'd carried all day. That night, though, the calm shattered. One of my friends was the first to notice it. A dark shape moving at the edge of the tree line, too deliberate to be a trick of the firelight. At first, we thought it was an animal. But then, the shape mirrored our movements. Every step we took, it shifted in kind, always maintaining distance, but never disappearing. "Are you seeing this?" my friend whispered, voice tight with unease. I think so," I admitted, my own pulse quickening. The shadow paused, tilted its head as if observing us with intent, then receded into the darkness. Night after night, the figure returned, each time closer. By the third night, it was almost at the edge of our campsite. We tried to laugh it off, to convince ourselves it was imagination or tricks of the firelight. But deep down, we knew better. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind carried the sense that we were being studied, measured, and perhaps hunted. Then, one morning, one of our group didn't wake. The tent was empty, the sleeping bag untouched. No footprints, no struggle, nothing to indicate what had happened. Only the shadow remained, fleeting and intangible, slipping back into the trees whenever we tried to confront it. We packed up and left, but the memory stayed. That shadow among the pines wasn't just a fleeting apparition. It was intelligent, patient, and relentless. And as I write this, I can't help but wonder, if it followed us this far, what waits deeper in the forest for the next unsuspecting camper? Some presences don't just observe, they choose who disappears next. Story 10. The Forgotten Campsite. I had been wandering for hours, maybe days. I couldn't tell. The forest had swallowed all sense of time, the sun and moon hiding behind thick, unnatural clouds. That's when I stumbled upon it. A campsite, abandoned but eerily familiar. A tent stood at the center, fire pit cold, backpacks neatly stacked, as if waiting for me. My stomach churned. This was my campsite, or a mirror of it. But something was unmistakably wrong. Objects shifted when I wasn't looking. My water bottle would appear on the other side of the tent, my jacket hanging from branches it hadn't touched before. Shadows stretched longer than possible, moving just beyond the firelight, almost sentient. And the air, it hummed, thick with an energy that pressed against my skin, insistent and alive. I called out, hoping to hear another human voice, but the only reply was a whisper, soft and deliberate, echoing phrases I'd read us in journals and seen in other campers' tales. Off trail, don't forget, we remember. It was as if every story I'd heard, every shadow I'd glimpsed, had been waiting for this moment. I tried to leave, retracing the paths I thought I knew, but the forest twisted around me. Trails folded back into themselves, trees rearranged like puzzle pieces, and the sun never rose. Panic surged, the same sensation I'd read in other accounts, the sensation of being observed by forces that were patient, intelligent, and unyielding. Hours or maybe minutes later, I collapsed beside the cold fire pit, heart hammering, mind fraying. And then it hit me. I was never leaving. The campsite had remembered me, and the forest had claimed me as part of its cycle, just as it had claimed the others. Whispers rose around me, familiar yet alien, like a choir of unseen watchers. I realized then that the woods aren't just a backdrop for fear. They are architects of it. If you ever find yourself off trail, remember this. The forest has a memory. It catalogs every footstep, every whispered word, every fleeting scream. And sometimes, if you wander too far, it doesn't just watch, it keeps you. The Forgotten Campsite isn't just a story, it's a warning. And now, so am I. I find myself back at the edge of the forest where it all began. The same weight of night pressing down, the same rustle of leaves that never seems to end. Even now, I can hear faint whispers, footsteps just beyond the firelight, and I can't shake the feeling that the woods remember every story, every trespass, every fleeting moment of fear. These 10 stories aren't just tales, they are warnings. They come from people who walked paths we often take for granted, who glimpsed the forest's secrets and lived to write them down, or in some cases, didn't. If you've ever wandered deep, felt that prickle of unease, or heard something you couldn't explain, maybe you understand what I mean. I want to hear your stories. Share them in the comments. Tell me about the strange sounds, the fleeting shadows, the moments when the night didn't feel empty. But remember, some secrets are too dangerous to uncover. Some truths the forest holds are meant to remain hidden, and curiosity can be its own kind of trap. As you close this video, take a moment and look around. Listen. The woods are watching. Maybe you already know that. And even if you don't see them, even if nothing moves, even if everything seems quiet, remember this. Sometimes the forest waits, patient and silent, until it decides it's your turn to notice.